Welcome to the Midnight Dreary, your rest stop on the highway of the unexplained. Pull up a bar stool and grab a drink as we present tonight's episode. And here's your host, Justin Wood.
Welcome back to this week's episode of the Midnight Dreary. I am your host, Justin Wood, and guess what, guys? We are 1 week away from our favorite holiday here at the Midnight Dreary. Hopefully your favorite holiday, I know it's mine, Halloween. October 31st, I always remind you to get your candy, to get your costumes. You have 1 week left, guys. That's all. You better go out, you better get them. And hopefully you have plans for Halloween. Maybe you're taking the kids out trick-or-treating. Maybe you're handing out some of that delicious candy that I am encouraging you to go ahead and buy before it sells out. Prices go up. It's a supply and demand market out there. And after you do your festivities, guess what? The Midnight Dreary is having our first live show. We're going to have it over on Podbean. So if you're not familiar with Podbean, that's where our podcast is hosted. They have an app and a website. You should be able to find us next Thursday, October 31st, Halloween, 10 p.m. to midnight, Central Standard Time. Guess what we're going to do? We're going to have a great Halloween special. We're going to do some scary stories. We're going to do some video game rankings. And I'm going to have my friend Grant Mills. If you haven't heard of Grant Mills, he is the host of the Everybody Has a Podcast podcast. Does a great job on the show. I hop on and co-host with him at times. He does video game reviews, does a lot of fun news, world records, sports, does college and NFL picks. He does it all. He's a man of many talents, really good guy. The podcast is much more adult-oriented, so probably better for the 18-plus audience we have out there. But he's a great host of the podcast, does a really good job, takes calls. Like I said, he does it all, a man of many talents. Really fun, and we're going to be doing the same thing. This is going to be fun to have him on. He's going to do some video game reviews with me on the retro systems. We're talking Nintendo. I'm going to go back and revisit my top 5. He's going to give his insight on Nintendo, Super Nintendo games that are still scary, still spooky, still replayable. So again, next week, Halloween, 10 o'clock to midnight, 2-hour Midnight Dreary live show. Tune in. That's Central Standard Time. Of course, we'll upload it as a normal podcast if that's past your bedtime. But if you decide to hang out with us late after the kids are in bed and all the trick-or-treaters have gone home to fill their bellies with candy, please tune in. It's going to be a lot of fun. Podbean also has the chat option, so you can listen and chat along as we're talking and discussing whatever topic we're on. It'll be spooky, Halloween related, and you may, if you want to, call in. We'll take some calls as well. So again, 1 week from today, Halloween. Have a great Halloween and tune in for the live show. So what have I been doing this past weekend? I've been getting back into some old media, into some TV shows and some movies that I watched. I did a little crash course so I could give you some reviews and ratings. The first one's kind of fun because I remember this one as a kid. It was based off Tales from the Crypt, but it was an animated horror TV series, Tales from the Cryptkeeper, aired in 1993. 2 seasons, started re-airing back in 1999. Kid-friendly spinoff of the popular show, one of my favorites, Tales from the Crypt, which, by the way, I saw that they're going to do 10 new episodes of Tales from the Crypt. I think starting tomorrow. I believe it's on the Cinemax streaming platform. Don't quote me on that. I believe it is starting tomorrow. I think that's what I saw. Let's get back to Tales from the Cryptkeeper, 1993, 2 seasons, the kid-friendly spinoff. Had the Cryptkeeper, of course, same voice, same one that terrified me as a kid when I peeked in watching my dad see Tales from the Crypt and he popped out of that casket. My God. That was terrifying for an 8-year-old. Absolutely terrifying. This one was fun, though. So the first episode of the series, and the one I watched, was called When the Cat's Away. I watched this on the Roku channel. It was free. I believe there's more episodes on there. So check it out if you're interested in a blast from the past. It was lighthearted, extremely cheesy. Might be good if you have kids, but it really wasn't as fun or great as I remember it. But still, it's Tales from the Crypt. I liked it, didn't love it. If I'm giving it a rating, I'm going to give it a 5.5 out of 10. Tick better than average just because I love the spooky factor of taking Tales from the Crypt to a humorous kid show. But if you're expecting some mind-bending supernatural thriller plot, you're probably not going to get that. It's for kids, kind of silly. Not really, it had some monsters in there, but I don't want to spoil it. You think for yourself. Tales from the Cryptkeeper, you can see it on the Roku channel. Number 2, what I watched this weekend, Creepshow 3. This was in 2006. Creepshow 3 is the third installment of the Creepshow series, released in 2006. Now, unlike the first 2 films, which were helmed by horror legends George Romero and Stephen King, this was directed by Anna Clavel and James Duddleson. Diverged from the style and atmosphere of its predecessors and was met with heavy criticism for its low-budget quality, poor acting, and lack of compelling stories, and it did not live up to the earlier films, which captured the Creepshow comic spirit. I love those comics. I actually bought some on eBay, same with the old Tales from the Crypt comics. I loved Creepshow 2. Was one of my favorite movies. I think that's great. This was Creepshow 3. It was absolutely trash. Really, I can't recommend it at all. If you're a fan of the Creepshow series and you just need to finish watching the third to complete the trio, that's probably the only way I would say watch it, get it out of your system. I give it a 2 out of 10. It was really bad. I wasted my time watching it. Terrible, terrible movie. Let's talk about number 3. And I'm ashamed I have not watched this before because so many people consider this one of the best horror movies. The Descent, 2005. The Descent is a British horror film released in 2005, directed by Neil Marshall. The movie follows a group of women who venture into an uncharted cave system only to discover that they're not alone. It's praised for its claustrophobic atmosphere, strong cast, and thrilling scares. The film became known for its terrifying portrayal of isolation and fear. Maybe that's true. It had great elements. It was unique. Good plot. Something different. I liked that a lot. One thing I wasn't crazy about, it goes back into more of the jump scare horror styles. That's not necessarily my favorite. I don't think it's bad. I think it suits a certain genre. But I liked it a lot still, even with that. So if you feel the jump scares are overused, you're not alone. I kind of felt the same way. That said, I still think it's a great plot. I think the acting was fantastic. The idea of setting a horror film in a cave was really fun, something I hadn't seen before. So The Descent, 2005, I recommend it, and I give it a 7 out of 10. By the way, if you have any difference of opinions, which you should, because I am absolutely not the authority on all things horror, movies, or television, let me know what you think, what you recommend, and what your ratings would be. The Midnight Dreary at yahoo.com. And this last one, love this movie, and it ties beautifully and segues well into what we're talking about tonight. The Mothman Prophecies. This came out in 2002, directed by Mark Pillington and starred Richard Gere. The film is loosely based on the book by John Keel, which explores the real-life sightings of the mysterious Mothman creature in Point Pleasant, West Virginia during the 1960s. The movie combines these sightings with fictional elements to create a suspenseful narrative. While not strictly a horror film, it delves into psychological tension and mysterious occurrences. I prefer this type of film. Actually, if I'm talking about scary films, I honestly think the ones that tie religious elements, Frailty, or The Witch are my favorite. I think those are the most terrifying. Just what I prefer. This one, supernatural thriller, it describes it really well. It's not so much horror, gory, very creepy though. Great performance by Richard Gere. Absolutely does a wonderful job. And I really liked it. It was a really good movie. If you're looking for something that is exactly the Mothman, what happened, the Point Pleasant bridge disaster, this probably isn't it. If you're looking for a good movie that ties some of those elements in there, uses some creative liberties and creative licensing, Wonderful movie. I think it's a great one. I give it an 8 out of 10. Really a big fan of the Mothman Prophecies. 2002. I think that was... No, the movies... Creepshow was 2006, The Descent 2005, Mothman was 2002, Tales from the Cryptkeeper, that's the cartoon, was 10 years before those, 1993. Hope you like that list, guys. I always try to give you something to look up and to review on your own. I would love to know what you rate those things. And if there's anything I'm missing you would like me to review, watch, suggest, or absolutely just crap on my ratings, please do. Once again, the Midnight Dreary at yahoo.com. We were talking about the Mothman Prophecies, and I told you that one used some creative liberties, but what was the real story? Let's dive in and go back to Point Pleasant, West Virginia in 1966. Wednesday, November 16th, 1966, straight from the Point Pleasant Register in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. It was a bird or something. It definitely wasn't a flying saucer. 2 Point Pleasant couples said today they encountered a man-sized bird-like creature in the TNT area about midnight last night. Sheriff's deputies and city police went to the scene about 2 o'clock this morning, but were unable to spot anything. But the 2 young men telling their story this morning were dead serious and asserted they hadn't been drinking. Steve Millette and Roger Scarberry described the thing as being 6 or 7 feet tall, having a wingspan of 10 feet and red eyes about 2 inches in diameter and 6 inches apart. It was like a man with wings, Millette said. It wasn't like anything you'd see on TV or in a monster movie. The men and their wives were in Scarberry's car between 11:30 and midnight when they spotted the creature near the old power plant adjacent to the old National Guard Armory buildings. The creature was seen standing on 3 occasions and was described as being extremely fast. It flew about 100 miles an hour in flight, but was clumsy as a runner. Deputy Millard Halstead said he had seen dust in the vicinity of a coal field, but it could have been caused by the bird, he said. I'm a hard guy to scared, Scarberry said, but last night I was for getting out of there. They did just that, but the thing followed them. They said it was hovering by the car, apparently gliding until they reached the National Guard Armory on Route 62. We went downtown, turned around, and went back, and there it was again, Millette said. It seemed to be waiting on us. He said the light gray creature then scurried through a field. It had also flown across the top of his car. It apparently is afraid of light, Millette reasoned, and maybe it thought it was scaring us off. The young men said they saw the creature's eyes, which glowed red, only when their light shined on it, and it seemed to want to get away from the lights. They said it looked like a man with wings, but that the head was not an outstanding characteristic. Both were slightly pale and tired from lack of sleep during the night following their harrowing experience. They speculated that the thing was living in the vacant power plant, possibly in one of the huge boilers. There are pigeons in all the other buildings, Millette said, but not in that one. If I had seen it a while by myself, I wouldn't have said anything, Scarberry commented, but there were 4 of us who saw it. They said it didn't resemble a bat in any way, but maybe what you would visualize as an angel. The last time they saw it was at the gate of C.C. Lewis Farm on Route 62. They heard a sound like wings flapping, and they said the bird rose up straight, like a helicopter. This doesn't have an explanation to it, Millette said. It was an animal, but nothing like I've seen before. Are they going to go back and look for the creature? Yes, Millette said. This afternoon and again tonight. Today, Scarberry said. But tonight? I don't know. Couple see man-sized bird, creature, something. That was the article from Wednesday, November 16th, 1966 from the Point Pleasant Register, the night after that sighting had occurred. So let's talk about it. What exactly is the Mothman? When did this start? Where did this originate? In all the reports I've read, all the history, it's pretty consistent what he looks like. Everyone says 6 to 7 foot, dark winged creature with red eyes, flying around very fast when it's in the air. But as that last story said, when he's on the ground, he's clumsy, hard to walk. That happened on November 15th, and that's the most popular sighting with the 2 young couples, Scarberry and Millette, seeing them when they were with their wives near the old TNT area, which was an old munitions plant from World War II. But I found another reporting just before that, 3 days before, November 12th, This one has various accounts. I've looked it up. I cannot find an exact news article on it. This one that I pulled, it says 5 men were digging a grave in Clendenin, West Virginia. I hope I didn't butcher that town too much. If I butchered the town of Clendenin, West Virginia, please email me at themidnightdreary@yahoo.com. 5 people digging a grave reported seeing a large humanoid creature with wings soaring over their heads. That was 3 days before. I looked on WV Explorer. It seems like they had a little more information on this. They agree with the date, November 12th, 1966. Kenneth Duncan of Blue Creek was digging a grave for Duncan's father-in-law, Homer Smith, in the cemetery at Clendenin with 4 other men when Duncan saw a human-like figure fly out of the surrounding woods and glide over their heads. Laboring with him that day were Robert Lovejoy, William Poole, Andrew Godby, and Emil Gibson, none of who apparently saw the creature. So this story gives you a name. It still says 3 days before, but only one of the guys had actually seen the creature. So we can at least agree there was a sighting by someone digging a grave on November 12th. But the biggest sighting was a couple of days later, and that was actually reported to the police. The second most famous sighting, just 24 hours later, involves a woman named Marcella Bennett, and I did find a news article about this. The news article is from 35 years after the incident happened, 2001. This is from Point Pleasant, West Virginia, the Dispatch. Let's read it. There are 2 kinds of people in Point Pleasant, those who believe in the Mothman and those who believe in the Mothman. Marcella Bennett is without a doubt a charter member of the first group. Now a gray-haired wisp of a woman, Bennett was 26 with a 4-year-old daughter in town when she came face-to-face with the wingman-sized creature. There hasn't been a Mothman sighting reported in Point Pleasant in more than 35 years, but a new generation of fans have been drawn to the Ohio River town after the release of a Hollywood feature purportedly based on true events. Bennett, who is still spooked by her encounter with the Mothman, has come to embrace the renewed interest in her story and the spotlight now focused on her hometown. On November 16, 1966, Bennett was visiting her sister near what's known locally as the TNT area, a sprawling wooded preserve of dirt roads, man-made ponds, and earth-covered concrete domes that once contained government high-explosive stockpiles. It was as close as you and I, she recalled, indicating a distance of about 3 feet. At first glance, it appeared to be a man in khaki work clothes standing by her car. Then she noticed the feathers. Sidebar, that's interesting that she noticed feathers because other people talk about wings, so maybe it is bird creature. Back to the story. I was just terrified, Bennett said, retelling the story first from her living room in Point Pleasant, a town of 4637, about 9 miles southeast of Columbus, and then from the spot where the creature surprised her. Dozens of Mothman sightings followed the first on November 15th, along with reports of strange lights in the sky and rumors of mysterious men in black. Then on December 15th, 1967, 13 months to the day from the first sightings, the Silver Bridge linking Point Pleasant to Gallipolis, Ohio, collapsed. 46 people were killed. Then the sightings simply stopped. A new phenomenon, however, has recently appeared in town. Film crews, reporters, sightseers, and buffs of the paranormal have discovered Point Pleasant following the release last month of the Mothman Prophecies, starring Richard Gere. So the article goes into talking about the movie that happened. So obviously this is around 2002. But they interviewed Marcella Bennett, and she was the second one that had what would that be considered? A close encounter of the third kind? Something to that degree, right? So what was unique about hers is when she was shocked by its presence, the glowing red eyes, she panicked, she dropped her child, 4-year-old child, and then she stumbled towards the house. The creature did not attack, but instead it spread its wings and took off. Bennett later described being in a state of shock and fear that persisted long after the incident. Her encounter added to the growing hysteria in the community. After her encounter, there was hundreds of encounters, some probably hoaxes committed, some maybe had a little more validity to them. Various local residents, including a local contractor, Newell Partridge, saw it again around the TNT area. Partridge, a contractor, claimed that his television set began to malfunction one night, showing static patterns and making strange noises. When he stepped outside, his flashlight beam revealed 2 red eyes glowing near his barn. His dog Bandit ran towards the creature, and Partridge later claimed the dog never returned. Additionally, several other residents reported seeing the creature's red eyes reflecting in the darkness or encountering it near their homes. I love Bandit. Bandit is awesome. He sees a huge creature reported to be 6-7 foot. Glowing red eyes, wings, possibly feathers, flying around 100. Bandit goes for it, man. Dogs are God's gift, man. They are wonderful. I hope that story's not true, because I want Bandit to return. I wanted him to be successful in his pursuit of the Mothman. Let's go to late 1966, early 1967. Various townspeople, including motorists and police officers. As the Mothman sightings continued, many residents began reporting UFO sightings and strange lights in the sky. Witnesses claimed to see large winged figures flying over the area, sometimes accompanied by unidentified lights and objects. These incidents, combined with encounters with the Mothman, led to growing speculation about a possible connection between the creature and extraterrestrial phenomena. Several eyewitnesses, including law enforcement officers, claimed to see lights hovering or moving rapidly in the sky near the TNT area, adding another layer of mystery to the Mothman legends. So, winter 1966, early 1967, sightings are hot. This guy is flying everywhere, all over town. Dogs are chasing him. He's scaring pregnant women. Moms are dropping their kids everywhere. Couples can't even go down to the TNT area and park their cars and have a good time. Mothman is scaring the hell out of everybody. So let's talk about the final sightings and then the prelude to the big event that happens and then the sudden disappearance. Throughout 1967, the sightings were sporadic, but as the year goes on, the creature's appearances seem to dwindle. During this time, Point Pleasant experienced an increase in reports of strange phone calls, sightings of men in black visiting witnesses, and overall paranoia. Many of those who had seen the Mothman reported bad dreams and a growing sense of dread. The sightings culminated with the catastrophic collapse of the Silver Bridge on December 15, 1967, which resulted in the deaths of 46 people. After the disaster, reports of the Mothman ceased, leading many to believe that the creature had been a harbinger of the tragedy. I've always wondered if I was saying that right. Is it harbinger or harbinger? If I'm saying it wrong, please email me to correct me. So, Mothman shows up for 13 months. There's key witnesses. The Gravedigger sighting is the first one, November 12th. Scarberry and Millette couples, they encounter him on November 15th. November 16th, Marcella Bennett sees the Mothman. She drops her 4-year-old. Late 1966, Newell Partridge, the contractor, has this electronic disturbance occur on his TV, goes outside. The Mothman's creeping by his barn. Bandit runs out, presumably barks, protecting his honor. Bandit's never seen again. And then throughout the next year, reportings occur sporadically while the town grows more paranoid. I imagine it's like The Simpsons and the monorail where nobody talks about it. In the towns that the monorail won't appear, they just shut the door and men in black are lurking around. And then, 13 months later, to the day of the first sighting, the Silver Bridge collapses, killing 46 people. The Silver Bridge spanned the Ohio River. It connected Point Pleasant with Gallipolis, Ohio. At around 5:04 during rush hour traffic on December 15, 1967, it suddenly gave way, plunging vehicles and people into the freezing river below. Again, 46 people died, and it was one of the deadliest bridge collapses in U.S. history. The design of the Silver Bridge was a suspension bridge built in 1928, had eye-bar chains instead of the traditional cables. It's earned its name because of the shiny aluminum paint that coated it. Standing 2,235 feet long, served as a major thoroughfare between Ohio and West Virginia, and it supported daily traffic between the two states. Let's talk about the cause of the collapse. Did the Mothman have anything to do with it, or was there any official determination that there was a more natural reason that the bridge gave way? Key findings. I-bar 330. The specific failure point was an I-bar 330, which is a crucial point of the suspension chain. An I-bar is a flat steel bar with a hole at each end through which a pin connects it to other I-bars to form a chain. On that fateful day, a crack developed in one of the eye bars. This crack was only 0.1 inches deep, but led to a catastrophic failure. Stress, corrosion, and fatigue also contributed. NTSB, National Transportation Safety Board, determined that the eye bar had suffered from a type of corrosion called stress corrosion cracking, combined with metal fatigue. Over time, microscopic cracks can form in metal, especially under constant stress, and these cracks can expand until material fails. Overloaded design. When the Silver Bridge was built in the late 1920s, the average weight of vehicles was much lower than in the 1960s. The bridge was designed to handle Model T Fords, which weighed about 1,500 pounds. By the time of the collapse, the bridge was supporting much heavier cars and trucks, which increased the strain on the aging structure. Never thought about that. As the technology advances, especially with cars and trucks, and think about the big rigs that go across bridges all the time, in 30, 40 years time span, trucks are getting bigger, but the infrastructure is not meant to keep up with that capacity or that weight going across of it, especially in such abundance. I can't imagine how many cars were around in 1928 compared to 40 years later. Lack of redundancy. The bridge's design did not have sufficient redundancy to prevent a collapse if one component failed. When I-bar 330 fractured, the entire load of the bridge was compromised, leading to the sudden and total collapse. So what happened with the Silver Bridge? It was a wake-up call regarding maintenance and safety of aging infrastructure in the United States. In the aftermath of the disaster, sweeping inspections of similar bridges across the country were conducted. The incident also prompted changes in how bridges are inspected and led to the adoption of more rigorous safety standards. Let's talk about Mothman and the Silver Bridge. So in the context of the legend, the Silver Bridge collapse is seen as the tragic climax. Sightings of the Mothman in the Point Pleasant area ceased after the disaster, leading to speculation that the creature was an omen or warning of the impending tragedy. This connection was also popularized in the movie we rated earlier, The Mothman Prophecies, which was also John Keel's 1975 book. And I don't want to make light of the Silver Bridge tragedy. That happened because of the specifics we talked about, an eye bolt failed causing the disaster. But did the Mothman, was his appearance, some type of precursor to disaster? And what happened afterwards? Did he show up anywhere else? Well, by all accounts, in Point Pleasant, the Mothman disappeared. But around the world, it's intriguing to note that several other disasters have connections to the Mothman. And when I say connections, I use it lightly because I couldn't substantiate any news articles that supported it, like the Point Pleasant incident. But let's go to Chernobyl in 1986. I saw online that some people referred to a creature resembling the Mothman, that they referred to the Blackbird of Chernobyl, that it appeared before the reactor disaster in April 26, 1986. The Freiburg screeching incident of 1978 in Freiburg, Germany. A group of miners heading to work at a mine reportedly encountered a creature known as the Freiburg Shrieker. Witnesses described it as a man-like creature with wings and glowing red eyes. Who does that sound like? Reportedly stood in front of the entrance to the mine, blocking their path and emitting a loud, shrieking sound. Shortly after the encounter, the miners witnessed a massive cave-in at the entrance they were about to enter, which would have surely killed them. All right. The Chicago Mothman sightings, 2011 to the present. They see the Mothman around O'Hare International Airport, and they said the most active year was 2017, when dozens of reports came in, leading to speculation that the Mothman or a similar creature had made its way to Chicago. Mothman's getting into the big city now. The Mexico Mothman of 2009 in La Junta, Mexico. Witnesses described the creature as a tall, winged being with glowing red eyes. That is a damning trait of the Mothman, the glowing red eyes. The sightings coincided with the reports of the outbreak of the swine flu, H1N1, back in 2009, again leading locals to believe that this was a precursor of doom. And then the Mothman of Cornstalk Heights in 2011, Cornstalk Heights, Tennessee. Shout out to anyone listening in Cornstalk Heights. Witnesses described seeing a large, dark figure with massive wings and glowing red eyes swooping low over fields and disappearing into the woods. These sightings were often accompanied by unexplained electrical disturbances and eerie noises. in the area. So after the Silver Bridge collapse, the Mothman has allegedly been sighted in various parts of the world, often in connection with disaster from Chernobyl to Chicago and beyond. People claim that they've seen the large winged creature with the glowing red eyes. So they do speak of him now as a harbinger of doom, an interdimensional being, or a paranormal entity that's linked to tragic events. Curious what you guys think about that. Is the Mothman, one, is he out there? Is he telling you that disaster's coming? Or was this just a one-time incident in Point Pleasant? Or was it just simply misidentification? Let's get into those theories. Alright, the first theory is the Mothman was misidentified wildlife, most notably a sandhill crane or a barn owl. Now, this is actually funny and coming at a crazy time because a local story, there's a owl that has been attacking runners on a local running and walking trail around my neck of the woods. You know, they don't say it's 7 foot tall with the glowing red eyes, but it is funny that they're aggressive. They flutter around your head. Don't think they quite go 100 miles per hour, and it's been seen in the daytime, and no one said it's a Mothman. It's just an owl. So most likely you would think that you could tell an owl, but let's think. You're in the middle of the night in rural West Virginia, probably not a lot of lights. Could you easily identify a sandhill crane or an owl? Or in the darkness, something's fluttering around quick? Maybe, your eyes, your ears, they play tricks on you. Let's talk about sandhill cranes. They can stand nearly as tall as a human with a wingspan of up to 7 feet. They have red patches around their eyes, which could reflect light and give them a glowing appearance in the dark. Many researchers believe that sandhill cranes were possibly displaced from their natural habitat, leading them to be spotted in areas like the TNT area near Point Pleasant. Plausible. I could see that. 7 foot wingspan, 7 foot tall. I think, red around the eyes, that's a common feature of the Mothman. I could see that. The barn owl theory. Barn owls have a distinctive facial structure and reflective eyes that could appear red under certain conditions. So a pair of owls nesting near the TNT area could explain why witnesses often described glowing eyes in the winged creature. I think the owls were also subject to the alien in the Hopkinsville alien encounter. I think so. I'd have to go back on my notes on that one. People blamed owls instead of metallic aliens coming out in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. So possibly misidentified wildlife, a flying sandhill crane, maybe a little territorial, or a barn owl. We know owls are territorial. I know that based off a local story. Number 2, a paranormal or supernatural entity. Could it really have been some type of a harbinger of disaster, harbinger of doom? Something that's a prophecy, fate, impending danger, interdimensional being, something like that. Maybe not. We have nothing that supports that. We have a couple of stories that talk about, its physical appearance, wings, feathers in some of those encounters. I think that was Marcella Bennett's, the big eyes. So could it be paranormal or supernatural entity? Maybe. Maybe not. An alien or extraterrestrial origin. Now, the alien one is a little interesting because there was some UFO sightings prior to that. I actually went back to my favorite book, Mysteries and the Unexplained. I was flipping through this timeline to see if Point Pleasant was mentioned in the book. I couldn't find it. It has tons of stories. Interestingly enough, there was UFO sightings in 1966 in northern Ohio, so not quite the area that we're talking about. This was right on the West Virginia-Ohio border, near southern Ohio, if my geography is correct. I looked on the map, and this was hundreds of miles away, but it's still the same year, and a rash of UFO sightings occurred. So I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens. No. I think it's more likely aliens than a paranormal entity, but I still think that's maybe a small chance of that happening. But with the UFOs involved, you'd never know. I like this theory a lot. A government experiment gone wrong. There is a conspiracy theory that the Mothman was a result of government experimentation. Gone wrong. The TNT area where most of the sightings took place was a former World War II munitions plant that held various dangerous chemicals and explosives. This led to some speculation that there could have been a chemical leak or military experiment that led to the creation of a mutated creature or gave rise to the hallucinations among locals. Interesting. I've heard that a lot of hauntings could be attributed to carbon monoxide in the home. Maybe if there was chemicals in the water, in the air, the atmosphere, combined with electrical disturbances. Hey, we talked about the television, right? Maybe some of the residents that saw things or were close to the munitions plant or by the electrical towers near there, maybe it was messing with their head. I don't know about a government experiment gone wrong, but could there be something at the government plant, the chemicals? Who knows? Possibly. All right. Some more likely, these kind of all tie in, more likely scenarios: folklore, mass hysteria, or simply a hoax or prank. So, obviously, skeptics believe the entire Mothman phenomenon could have just been a result of a hoax or a prank. Looking back at the stories, I found 2 articles about actually seeing the Mothman. Now, they were pretty consistent. They were about 24 hours apart. Is it possible they were making it up? And maybe the first couples were. And then the next day, just the lady, Marcella, fell into hysteria. She saw something, a sandhill crane, and made her drop her baby. That's possible. But then there's some credible witnesses. We do have some police officers, and we did have news articles reporting several other ones. Now, they didn't have the specifics like the first 2 witnesses that came forward, the couples, and then Marcella, and then the gravedigger, which couldn't find a solid source on that. But, it's possible someone may have pranked it, similar to Bigfoot walking around, or someone walking around with Bigfoot feet, or even those massive feet print to see. But how would somebody ride around, or float around, or fly around with big red eyes? Now, the mass hysteria, I personally think that there was something to the sightings, be it a bird, a hoax. I think somebody, or many people, saw something and, they believed what they saw. They can't explain it, so the Mothman is born. That being said, I think when the Silver Bridge collapsed, I don't think the Mothman sightings just suddenly stopped. I think there was just more important matters at hand that the press and the population of Point Pleasant needed to focus on, and it wasn't the hysteria around the Mothman anymore. This was more serious. 46 people died. A bridge is out that connects 2 states that has a huge impact on your local economy. So yeah, I don't think that really ties together. The sightings were going down before the disaster occurred. I don't think it was a prophecy, anything intertwined with that. I just think it was bad timing, and I think that when that did occur, more important matters were at hand to attend to, and nobody really gave this a second thought until John Keel's book came out years later. And maybe this would have been swept in the dustbin of history had that book not come out. But that being said, there are stories, there's news articles that we read, probably more. And if you can find those, send those to me at themidnightdreary@yahoo.com about what happened in 1966 and what exactly did all the people see that claimed they saw the infamous Mothman of Point Pleasant. Now, if this story intrigued you and you want to do more digging into the Mothman or visit Point Pleasant, West Virginia, every year they have an annual Mothman Festival. What is the Mothman Festival? It's an annual gathering that commemorates the mysterious visit of the Mothman in the 1960s. It says it's a great event for all ages, held in downtown Point Pleasant, West Virginia, featuring live music, merchandise from various vendors, food trucks, cosplay, speakers, and of course, you. Where is it located? It is located right in the heart of Main Street in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. This year was September 21st and 22nd, 2024. You've missed it by a month, so sorry to say, but start planning for 2025. They usually do it the 3rd weekend of September, it says, and kicks off on Friday evening of the weekend. How much does it cost to get into the Mothman Festival? $0. Admission is free. There are some events and attractions that may have a fee, and there's a fee for the admission to the Mothman Museum, which is amazing. I would love to go and see the Mothman Museum. If you're interested in going to the Mothman Festival, check out mothmanfestival.com. It has been a great episode. This one's been fun. I love the movie. I highly recommend it. Would love to see what you guys think about the actual story and your own review of the movie with Richard Gere, which came out in 2002. Guys, like I said, Halloween's a week away. Join us next Thursday night, October 31st, 10 p.m. to midnight Central Standard Time, the Midnight Dreary live show. You can check it out on Podbean. Join us. We'll do a chat. I'll have my co-host, Grant Mills, popping in that night to do some video game reviews, some Halloween chat, talking retro 90s Halloweens that we grew up with, up to what's happening in today's Halloween world. We'll always review popular costumes, great video games that are scary movies, and our own personal tales. We'll take your calls that night. If you're on the Podbean app or the website, join us in the chat. I'll be replying to your questions and comments, listening out for your suggestions. So enjoy it. Get your candy. Get your costumes. Send your feedback. Send your suggestions. The Midnight Dreary at yahoo.com. Guys, have a happy Halloween if you don't hear my voice until after the holiday, and have a great night.
Thanks for stopping by the Midnight Dreary. We'll be open again next week to serve up more drinks and more mysteries. Until then, safe travels.